Welcome back to The Perspective. Now, Siraj, you say here that Indonesia has the potential to become the digital economy market, the biggest digital economy market in ASEAN. And therefore, this forces businesses to engage in efforts to find or produce unique content. This is challenging for Indonesia, isn't it? Especially when I feel like Indonesian consumers, maybe other consumers, of course, global consumers as well, are very, very demanding when it comes to uniqueness of a certain product, especially when you have so many ample choices out there.
Content is consumer driven, and most companies should engage their consumers in the content development. And when companies engage consumers, I think they will get a much better perspective on what type of content to produce and to send it on to the consumers. In most cases, the content strategy is usually done without keeping the consumers in mind. You know, it comes from a company's perspective. So in the digital economy, the consumer has to be at the center of all content development. So if companies in Indonesia focus on the consumer and what they need, I think they'll be able to come up with much better content focused strategy. And globally, that's where most countries are actually heading. You know, they are actually looking at the consumer at the core of everything they do, and they develop their content to actually communicate with them. So one core thing in Indonesia would be, okay, let's focus on the consumer rather than focusing on the company itself first.
Right.
Because consumers are the ones who are actually going to drive your business. Yeah. So let's focus on them, then your content strategy will also be right.
Okay. So with this crazy flow of information back and forth between consumers and businesses and things in between, we always come to the issue or concern of security on digital contents, right? And this is also one of the trends that you've included in this survey, is to show that consumers have become more daring in giving out their personal information. Is it based on maybe because they have more trust on the businesses, on the brands, or on the infrastructure itself?
Sure. I think security needs to be looked at in two contexts. One is security of the personal information which consumer gives.
Yeah.
Okay. Protecting consumer information is sacrosanct.
Right.
And that is what most companies must actually focus on.
Yeah.
In Indonesia, the consumers are a little more liberal in giving out their information than in other global markets. Our research has clearly pointed out that in Indonesia, there are people who are very comfortable about giving out their personal information. So,
is this any different than any other markets that you've surveyed?
In Western and European market, in US and in Europe, there is a tendency to give less information.
Yeah.
But in Asia, we see Asians are a little more happy to share more information with companies.
What do you think that is?
I think it's more to do with the culture itself, because Asians are a little more social, and they believe that when they are sharing information, they will actually get better service.
All right, when you talk about culture, shouldn't that be the other way around? Isn't the Westerners always been more open into sharing information, or is it because of the awareness of of security out there that anyone can tap into that security from anywhere in the world? Is that what's stopping them from giving more information or withholding information?
Definitely awareness in the Western market about data security is much more high. But in an Asian context, one is awareness, and the second thing is Asians are a little more social.
Right.
Okay, and they believe that when they're actually sharing information, they are actually sharing it in positive faith, and they believe that the companies will use that information in a positive faith as well. So that's why I feel that Asians actually give out a little more information than the Western counterparts. So one is the entire focus on consumers' personal information, and then the second focus is on security of transactions itself. Because if you are going to go into a digital economy, how are you going to manage the entire digital transactions? And that's where I think the focus should be on how are you going to protect consumers when they are actually going and ordering online. So one is consumer information and the other one is transaction. So if you look at both the areas of security, I think that's where there is a huge opportunity for companies in Indonesia to actually build an entire security ecosystem, which will help consumers to make faster decisions on going online.
Right. How do we stand on security of transactions? Indonesia itself, all the core business, e-commerce, and as you know, it's expanding, and Indonesia is looking forward to a very high revenue from digital or businesses or e-commerce. How do you think Indonesia is doing right now on that?
In fact, that was one of the core points which actually came out in our research. Indonesian consumers are actually saying if the security can be improved, then there will be more online transactions.
So you're saying there's security on transactions is not up to the level which the consumers
absolutely
wish at
yes.
moment. All right. Now the question that I want to go back to you regarding survey and information about consumer behavior out there. Do you think there's enough information for businesses out there about how this is one of them, like this is exactly what you're doing, trying to provide that information so that businesses can benefit from that. Do you think there's enough information out there about consumer behavior for the digital economy? Businesses?
Yes. There are a lot of companies who are now doing research in Indonesia, okay, and there are so many sources you can actually go to. In an Indonesian context, I think there's a lot of information if companies are seriously looking to find out about consumers, consumer trends, digital trends. There are many companies who can actually help you with that. It's not just consulting companies, there are also research companies.
All right. Yeah. We'll go for another short break. Sure. The Perspective will return with Mohammed Sirajuddeen, the Managing Director of Accenture Digital. We'll be right back.